Government institutions such as Eskom, Transnet and Denel no longer have to disqualify suppliers just because they do not meet BEE requirements. Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana on Friday promulgated new preferential procurement regulations that do away with the controversial qualification that has been in place since 2017. Now, there have been mixed reaction to this particular move, and let's speak to Lumkile Mondi, who is the senior lecturer at the Wits University School of Economics and Business Science. Mr. Mondi, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. Looking at, the latest developments here, is this a step in the right direction?
Absolutely. I just want to remind viewers about the significance of this move by the Treasury at the back of a very difficult period for South Africa, where, given the history of economic development in South Africa, where mining as well as energy, as argued by both Fan and Rastomji, have been at the center of economic development, building in an industrial base which was very close to what we've seen in many of the middle-income countries, such as Mexico, Brazil, and others. So therefore, the Zuma regime, who were at the center of promulgating these laws under the Minister Gordon and many others who had stood on a ticket of radical economic transformation, were a recipe for the recapturing of the state and state institution by private individuals for self-gains, and work done by both Nimrod Zak shows to us how the BE has been instrumental in terms of eroding our industrial base. But at the back of it also, our capital in South Africa has taken money out of South Africa to the rest of the world, which these companies were at the center of economic development and industrialization. These companies include Anglo-American and many others who basically left us and moved money offshore, as shown by Siraj Mohammed in his work. So this move really by the minister is to bring in black industrialists, bring in a white capital who have got capabilities to ensure that we rebuild the industrial infrastructure at the back of our reinvestment, both at Eskom and Transnet in this case, but many other firms where BE basically has been a conduit of distracting capabilities of Africa, and hence we have lost those capabilities, and therefore this is the right move by Minister Godongwana.
I suppose then you wouldn't agree with the statement that was put out by the South African Youth Economic Council, saying that, and I'm borrowing from them, they say this move is regressive, counterproductive to building a class of black capitalists and industry players.
I completely disagree with that because that class has to be informed by capabilities. We know that a lot of the black, the so-called BE beneficiaries, they all, at least most of them, have been politically linked. They are all billionaires, and they've not even built one business. What we've seen is working very, very well so far, driven by Minister Ibrahim Patel, is around black industrialists. This is a program of supporting black entrepreneurs who roll up their sleeves, who develop companies, and in that process succeed. And I know many individuals who have done so, which were displayed by the minister recently at the convention center in Senting, where blacks roll up their sleeves. So many people in the past 27 years who've been beneficiaries of BEE are yet to show us a black industrial group that is employed and run by blacks, that is successful. What we've seen multimillionaires owning houses across the nation, showing off imported luxuries, and therefore leaking money out of South Africa to the rest of the world. When South Africa needs cooperation, it needs creating capabilities, it needs developing blacks and including them in the mainstream of the economy. And I think that's what the Black Industrial Program is about. And that's what I think through this promulgation, want to see so that we can differentiate between rent seekers and serious black industrialists, as we have seen in the program run by Minister Patel of Black Industrialists.
I suppose then you could then argue against those who are saying that you look at the economic redress that is then needed in South Africa and saying that if such policies are put in place, it could take South Africa back when it comes to the issue of putting everybody on a leveled playing field. But as you say, according to you, there are those efforts that could get underway. So how does government begin to balance the scales here of ensuring that everyone is put on the, an economic level playing field, yet at the same time avoid the abuse, which has been very concerning, that you've so highlighted as well?
So the abuse is not going to happen, or bringing justice and redress, it's a long-term game. It's a long-term game, and you begin by first ensuring that the basic service to the poorest black majority who've got no access to transport infrastructure, who have got no access to electricity, to water infrastructure, because many of the so-called black economic empowerment players were actual rent seekers. And the only thing they were after was getting bucks and living a lifestyle. So where we're going now, through what the Minister Godongwana has announced, and through the programs of our government, through black industrialists and support from the DBSA, from the IDC, as well as private sector investment, is those blacks who deserve the support because they show capability, they're investing on know-how, they are partnering with those internationally that have got know-how, and we share and develop. We're moving away from the financialization of the South African economy, which has defined the past 26 years, and thereby destroying the capabilities of industrialization. So I'm encouraged with this. I don't understand why blacks will be looking at equality with whites, when in fact we should earn it because of our commitment to economic development, ensuring that the black majority have access to cheaper transport, access to cheaper food, access also to better education, better health services. That is economic development, not those of millionaires showing off and living a lifestyle. It is about making every black person have the ability to step in the ladder, climb the ladder, and get there. And I think the current PE has given the step only to those that are politically linked and those that can shout most without developing any capability whatsoever. And they're scared today, they're shaking because they know that they've got nothing to show except their political linkage. And this is what we should be encouraging. This gazetted policy, but more importantly also the program driven by the DTIC of black industrialists, whereby we want to ensure that we now have got our own successful black industrialists who are going to be engaged in the reindustrialization of South Africa and getting South Africa's building stuff that we can see, and that we can also ensure that that stuff they're building makes black participate in the economy, because there's cheaper transport, there's cheaper food, and therefore education is also accessible to all, which at the moment is a huge hindrance because of these B programs that are for rent seekers.
And what about some of the concerns that have been expressed around the issue of the absence of, the clause that the Minister of Trade and Industry can force certain sectors to buy local products or even content? And they say that, of course, for them, this was huge when you look at the, the 2017 regulations. What does it mean then for local producers?
So what it means for local producers, this is a huge step. Remember, our viewers, that if you live in Joburg, all that area, from GP's Town all the way to Springs, was our industrial base. And it was driven by South Africans. Yes, they're white, but those white South Africans were committed to South Africa's development. Of course, they got in a lot of blacks. Remember that this economy that we inherited was based on black cheap labor, but also cheap coal, which informed the minerals and energy complex. Therefore, the shift towards PE brought in players who don't understand the process of economic development and focusing inward to build the capabilities. So what this does is to bring back those white industrialists. And in that process, because we have got a program of black industrialization, that somewhere they're going to meet and put South Africa back in the productive game, in the productive investment game, away from financialization, rent-seeking, and people concerned about conspicuous consumption and a high standard of life, when in fact the gap between the black and white, among the black poor and the black elite is widening. So these are the core issues we need to develop, and you can only develop if we support productive investment. And in doing so, we create capabilities, we learn, we make mistakes, but what we're doing, we're focusing on South Africa, and then it's easier for campaign to buy proudly South African, because we can produce locally, we can import and substitute because there's a market that we've created. This PE hasn't done that. It's created people who aspire to expensive, internationally important stuff, and we're failing our own productive forces. And I think this shift in the next 10 years will show the significance of this policy shift, which I see as being driven by the Treasury, but I think the Minister of DTIC, NH, they're all buying into it, because it's only through productive industrialization can South Africa create jobs, and therefore, when we've got wars taking place in Europe, we can be self-sufficient and drive our agenda, an African agenda, through the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, as we make this sanctuary an African sanctuary.
All right, Mr. Mondi, thank you so much for your time. Do appreciate it this afternoon. That is Lumkile Mondi, the senior lecturer at the Wits School of Economics and Business Science.